Computers aren't emotional enough, and their designs aren't egalitarian enough. As such, they don't reflect the values of all their users. Let's explore. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Freedom Alternative. Whenever you feel it's not worth paying your taxes, and you might be tempted to think that paying them actually makes the world a worse off place, or the cash is being used against you or against common sense, it's nice to receive assurances from time to time that this isn't really the case. So, tax-paying Americans should be filled with joy that their hard-earned tax dollars are being used by the National Science Foundation, which is currently spending over $300,000 to create feminist theory for human interaction with computers, and aims to make computer systems more gender-sensitive. Seriously, stop laughing over there. Let's read some more. The principal investigator's long-term goal is to create theory to inform human-computer interaction design practices to ensure the production of egalitarian designs that reflect all users' values. In particular, she aims to create feminist theory for HCI, which she hopes will close the gap in women's participation in computing. Previously, the principal investigator has shown how approaches to designing for women are questionable when viewed in light of feminist theory. Feminist scholars argue that the lack of women in computing further discourages women from pursuing programming-related careers, and that women are also excluded because technologies created by men better address male needs. The principal investigator believes the problem lies not only in who is excluded, but in that the design process inherently alienates women. Her approach is to address the problem by bridging previously unrelated aspects of the learning sciences, human-computer interaction, and the science and technology studies of gender, which will be combined with findings from a multi-year ethnographic study to acquire a deep understanding of how girls co-construct their gender and technical identities, how technologies come to be associated with one gender or the other, and how this affects girls' career choices. These results will be used as the basis for participatory design with the girls to create technologies in keeping with their gender identity. In doing so, the principal investigator expects to learn about girls' needs, enabling her to develop best practices for gender-sensitive design, ensuring equitable access to technology. Okay, and the broader impacts? This research will directly impact women's training in computing, as well as lead to changes in the design process to be more inclusive for women. The project will create grounded theory on gender and technical identity that will inform participatory design, which in turn will allow the identification of needed changes to the software development process so that it results in more technologies that empower young women to use technology. As a consequence, the pool of qualified computer scientists will ultimately expand to include more women, which in the long term will increase workforce, thereby making the United States more globally competitive in business and more able to pursue scientific national security efforts. Furthermore, the project will directly benefit the group of young women involved in the ethnographic study, increasing their practical experiences with technology by teaching them software design, human-computer interaction, programming skills, and the foundation in computational thinking. This study has cost the taxpayers $345,019 so far, and is bound to cost even more since the research for this will continue until 2019. Now, this study is too advanced for us simpletons and plebs to actually fathom not just the profound complexity of this, but also why it's badly needed, because, you see, you're all too mired into patriarchal thinking for such a task. Nevertheless, let's try to think of a way for computers to run on emotion instead of logic. A feminist computer if you want. For starters, a feminist computer is gender sensitive, so its performance is not measured in its capacity to conduct calculations, but rather if it's free of patriarchy or not. As such, all feminist computers run at around 1 MFZ a day, no more, no less, since the aim is to be, well, egalitarian. We all know that competition is a patriarchal value, so such thing is totally verboten in a feminist computer. Now, the MFZ stands for Masculinity Free Zone, as you may have already guessed. However, to make sure it mirrors the feminist thinking entirely, the 1 MFZ a day is not constant. It depends on how the code feels today. It's on a continuum, if you want. As such, the performance changes depending on the time of the month, which in practicality means that for about a week every month, the computer will just bring up unrelated programs or registry conflicts and will power off randomly, progressively, on a progressive continuum if you want. Now, those patriarchal geeks out there may think that, well, this is bad, but they would of course be wrong. This is the technical identity of a feminist design of a computer, and you must respect it. You wouldn't want to be a misogynist now, wouldn't you? We all know misogyny is bad. Now, if you're a woman using this computer, that's absolutely fine, but if you're a man who intends to be using this marvelous feminist computer, you should also be aware that in line with feminist thinking and practice, the computer tends to run off with your data, and even after a lengthy court procedure, you'll probably only get access every other Sunday afternoon for a couple of hours. So far, no observable logical or commonsensical procedure to avoid this has been identified. Now, feminist scholars and experts have also hinted in the past that no such procedure would ever exist in a feminist computer, because although you may claim that it is your data, the data in fact belongs to the computer since it hosts it and tenders for it. Therefore, the presumption must be that the data needs the computer more than it needs you. At least for the several years the computer, well, tends for it. Another issue that hopefully this study will clear up is that these feminist computers really do have an issue with running smoothly over the long run, since they constantly spend all of their resources. Feminist experts have hinted in the past that this may indeed be solved by implementing a privilege checker algorithm that will be applied to the users, since there is no way the computer itself can be at fault for that, because a feminist is never at fault for anything. Now, I know that patriarchal experts in, well, the real world have already mansplained, that situational awareness and careful calculus to weigh the needs versus the available resources can go a long way towards fixing this, but that's of course the male privilege talking. The feminist computer must strive to create the paradise now, even if that means crashing everything around it and inside it to achieve that. Okay, so now that we've cleared things up a little bit about this marvelous piece of research, aren't you already filled with joy that the state uses tax money to fund this? And for those of you out there who don't live in the United States, please make sure to write your representative to also consider using your tax money to contribute to this fabulous forward-thinking piece of research. As for those of you out there who may be inclined to be reactionary, sexist, right-wing, teabagging scum, please do consider being less mean. Embrace progress, comrades. You'll thank me later. And with that being said, thank you for watching.